This is lesson 12-2, equal ratios and proportions. Our essential question, how can you find equal ratios? And this picture here shows us how to tell if two ratios are proportional. And we can do that by finding their cross products. We have one vocab word, which is proportion, a mathematical statement that two ratios are equal. Example number 1, write two ratios that are equal. Now we do this the same way that we find equivalent fractions. So just like with that, we can either multiply both of these numbers by a number. You can pick any number you want, or we could see if they can be divided by the same number, and if they can, we can divide. Now remember, in the last lesson we talked about there's 3 ways to write a ratio. So we have 12-21 in this example. Or I could write it like this with the word 2 in the middle. Or I can write it as a fraction. So if it's easiest for you to write it as a fraction, you can do that. So I have 12-21. So we have to find two equal ratios. Let's multiply first. Now remember, you can multiply by any number you want. You just have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. So let's multiply by 2. So 12 times 2 is 24, and 21 times 2 is 42. So 24 over 42 is one equal ratio. Now I'm going to rewrite the fraction again so we can find our second equal ratio. And I just wrote it as in a fractional way. And this time, let's divide by 3, because 12 and 21 can both be divided by 3 evenly. And 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. So 4/7 is another equal ratio. So again, it's just like when we found equivalent fractions. You can multiply by any number you want, or you can divide if the numerator and denominator can both be divided evenly. Okay, number 2. Are the ratios proportional? So we have 3 hits to 27 at-bats for our first ratio. And then the second ratio is 4 hits to 32 at-bats. Now here's how we find out if two ratios are proportional. We look across. So we look at 3 hits and 32 at-bats. And all we do is multiply those numbers. So I multiply 3 times 32, which equals 96. And then I do the same thing for the other 2 parts. So I go 4 hits to 27 at-bats. So you just have to go to the one that's across from it. That's why it's called the cross products. And then you multiply those 2 numbers. I have 27 times 4, which equals 108. And now to tell if they're proportional or not, I just look at my 2 answers and see if they're the same. And 96 and 108 are not the same. So these 2 ratios are not proportional. So my answer is no. Okay, example number 3, write 2 ratios that are equal. So we're going to do the same thing that we did in example number 1. Now, 1/3 is already in simplest form, 1/3. So we can't divide by anything. So we're going to be multiplying by something. And the good thing is we get to pick whatever number we want. I'm going to choose the number 3. So I have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. And 3 times 3 is 9. So 3/9 is one ratio that is equal. And then the next number I'm going to multiply by is going to be 4. So 1 times 4 is 4, and 3 times 4 is 12. So my second equal ratio is 4/12. Example number 4, are the ratios proportional? So we're going to do the same thing we did in example number 2. We look at the numbers that are across from each other. So we have 7 hours times 24 times. So we do 7 times 24, which equals 168. Now we do it with the next two numbers, 3 hours times 56 times. So 56 times 3 is also 168. So looking at my answers, my products, they are equal. So yes, my ratios are proportional. All right, you have 3 practice problems. The first 2, you have to write ratios that are equal. If it makes it easier for you, you can write them as fractions. And then number 3, you have to tell if they're proportional. So you just multiply the numbers that are across from each other and see if they're the same. Don't forget a word problem or a question, and rate your understanding.